Now we continue our week with Descartes with meditation 2. In the first meditation, we saw Descartes undertake his project of hyperbolic doubt. He proposes essentially an ideal of starting over from nothing, discarding everything he's ever believed was true in order to set new foundations for knowledge. This is an ideal of starting with no presuppositions whatsoever. But can Descartes really do this? We've noticed that there are several assumptions that are already built into the way Descartes undertakes his project. One assumption is contained, as we've already seen, in the metaphor of the building that he wants to raise to the ground. He assumes that knowledge has a set of definite foundations and that everything else is built up on top of that. And along with this, he assumes that the metaphor of the building is more appropriate, say, than the metaphor of a city, of multiple buildings. All of knowledge fits together systematically in one particular framework, resting upon one limited set of foundations. And another thing that Descartes assumes here is contained in how he proposes to readmit certain things as knowable, things that he cannot reject, that he cannot doubt. And that's what he's looking for here in meditation 2. He's looking for something that he cannot possibly doubt, that it's not possible for him to doubt no matter what. This is going to set for Descartes also a criterion of knowledge. Nothing is going to count for him as genuine knowledge unless it is absolutely certain, unless it is not possible to doubt it whatsoever. Now we have seen a distinction that underlies our distinction between rationalism and empiricism of this area of the history of philosophy. We have seen this distinction implicit already in Descartes' doubt in the first meditation. Descartes doubts, first of all, things that are based upon sensory observation, propositions that we would call a posteriori. They are dependent upon experience. They cannot be known independently of experience. It requires us that we see or hear or touch and evaluate some kind of evidence that we get through our senses, through our experience in the world around us, in order for us to be able to know it. Now this, a posteriori propositions are generally opposed to what we call a priori propositions, statements that are independent of experience, things that can be known independently of experience. And we saw that this was what Descartes was after with his concept of the evil deceiver. He thinks that the other arguments still do not call into question the veracity of truths that can be known just by the exercise of reason alone. And he has here in mind particularly logical and mathematical truths. That's how he said that the evil deceiver is necessary in order to cast doubt upon the veracity of such simple beliefs as 2 + 2 = 4. And so Descartes is going to insist that anything that counts as knowledge must rest upon certain indubitable a priori foundations. But what could that be? What Descartes discovers, what he decides that he cannot possibly doubt here in the second meditation, is his own existence, and particularly the existence of his own thought. Whatever he doubts, as long as he is conscious of his own doubting, as long as he has that particular element of self-awareness, then Descartes concludes he cannot doubt that he himself is. This is the famous "I think, therefore I am" formulation that Descartes uses, but not here in the meditations. So Descartes concludes that it is indeed impossible for him to doubt his own existence. But before he continues to see if there's anything else that he can know with certainty besides his own existence, Descartes stops to ask, what this thing is that I designate with this little word I. What am I? And Descartes' examination of this is very interesting. There's a lot going on here that you might not see just in your first glance at the text. Descartes starts out by asking, well, what did I think I was before? He's going to entertain some answers to this question, what am I? And he's going to reject those answers. What did I think I was before? A rational animal, perhaps? He's going to reject that. I can't say that I'm a rational animal because if I'm going to go in that direction, I have to first define and understand what rational means. And then I have to understand what animal means. And I've opened up a whole new can of worms when I want to simplify things and just rest on things that I can know with absolute certainty. This takes us into obscurities in his view. So this idea that I'm a rational animal is something that Descartes is rejecting. Now, Descartes doesn't tell us explicitly in the Meditations where he got this notion, but his contemporaries who are reading this would certainly have known that this is a traditional definition of the human being. It's one that we find among the ancient Greeks, and it's one that we find in particular in Aristotle. The human being is a rational animal, a zoon, logon, echein, an animal that is in possession of language and reason. So instead of looking at these definitions, Descartes says he's going to ponder what presents itself and what nature presents to him spontaneously when he contemplates what I am. Now, this is not as spontaneous as he would have us believe. Descartes continues in this part. Let's take a look at the exact passage. It occurred to me first that I have a face, hands, arms, and this entire mechanism of bodily members, the very same as are discerned in a corpse, which I referred to by the name body. It also occurred to me that I eat, walk, feel, and think. These actions I used to assign to the soul as their cause. This is an interesting list of qualities that Descartes gives us here. It occurred to me before that I was a thing that would eat, walk, feel, and think. And he assigned this to the soul. Now, Descartes is alluding here explicitly to the Aristotelian analysis of the structure of the soul. Although Descartes doesn't name Aristotle, he's taking this straight out of Aristotle in order to reject it. Aristotle divided the soul into three basic different types. The soul for Aristotle, indeed for all of the Greeks, is a principle of life. It's what distinguishes a living thing from a corpse or from an inanimate body. A living thing has some sort of force of life which makes it alive, and that's soul. Whether it's material or immaterial, whether it has parts or is simple, all of these other questions are independent of this notion that soul is the principle of life among the ancient Greeks. Now, as that function of living, which the soul provides, Aristotle then divides soul into basically three different types, dividing living beings into three types: plants, animals, and a separate section for human beings. Plants are living things, therefore they have souls. Well, what functions of life do they perform? Relatively primitive and basic functions. Plants grow and decay, they take in nourishment, they have some way of reproducing. That's what plants do, and that's about it. Okay. What's the first thing that Descartes mentioned here? I eat. Okay. I take in nourishment. Okay. That's a basic function of soul that, for the Greeks, that all living things share. Eating, taking in nutrition. Beyond the plant soul, we have the animals. Okay, what do the animals do? Well, eating for plants, for most plants, is a relatively simple affair, and it's largely a matter of chance. Plants are rooted into the ground. They have to be in a good place with good enough soil, enough water, and some sunshine, and they'll be doing okay. Animals, on the other hand, have to look for their food. So they have to be able to move around. Right? So animals have this ability to move that plants don't do. They have the ability to walk from place to place or slither from place to place, whatever form of locomotion they have. This is something that most animals share. Now, locomotion, in order to be able to go out and get food in different places rather than having to be rooted in one place, obviously that has certain advantages. If there's no good food where you are right now, you can go someplace else. But the ability to move oneself around wouldn't do you much good unless you could also identify your food when you found it. And so animals not only have locomotion, not only have this ability to move themselves, but they also require sensory perception in order to be able to survive. Okay, so these two things go together. The ability to move oneself from place to place and the ability to perceive things. As functions of soul, these go together in Aristotle. Notice these are also on Descartes' list there. I'm a thing that eats, walks, feels. Okay, so walking and feeling, those are together with Aristotle. Now, human beings in Aristotle's view do something different still. They have some additional function of soul beyond those other functions that the animals have. And that is that human beings have language, thought, and intellect. Animals, in Aristotle's view, don't, for the most part, don't make much use of concepts. They don't have human linguistic ability. They don't reason as humans do. Now, there's no absolutely sharp distinction for Aristotle here, and we can see that there is certainly quite a gradation within the animal realm. But there's a distinction nonetheless. Some animals, obviously, in Aristotle's view, are closer and higher functioning than others, but none of them really have this ability that the humans do in Aristotle's view of language and reasoning. So reasoning is another function of soul that humans have. So there we have it. Okay, eating, walking, feeling, and thinking. These four items that Descartes lists. But now Descartes is going to knock some of these things off the list of qualities that are possessed by this thing we call I. And he's going to do this on the basis of what he thinks he can know for sure and what he can't know for sure. He knows that he can't doubt his own existence. But he doesn't even know if he actually has a body or not, or if there are any bodies. There might be no external physical material world. It might be that all there are, the only things that exist, are all ideas in my mind and nothing else. I have no way of discerning that just from looking at the ideas that I have in my mind. The dream argument is his reason for that. And so Descartes says, well, I can't assume that I'm a soul with a body because I might not have a body. It's logically possible. And if I don't have a body, I could hardly be a thing that eats either. Obviously, I have the experience of feeling hungry and feeling and eating and tasting and feeling satisfied, but those are all mental things that are going on. That could be like a dream too, as far as I know. That's logically possible, Descartes thinks. And so I can't say that this I is a thing that eats. And if I don't have a body, then I'm certainly not very likely to be walking about either. I'm also not a thing that walks. What about the thing that feels? Well, feeling, that's something that's mental, okay? So whether or not I have a body for real, whether or not there is a real material world, or all there are ideas and things, I still do have perceptions and feelings. I just don't know if there's something out there that corresponds to those feelings, but those feelings are very real. They're in my mind. And so notice now Descartes sharply divides here what goes together with Aristotle, walking and feeling. Physical things, if there are any such things, are one thing, body. Mind is something else. Feeling is something mental, as is thinking, hoping, desiring, fearing, aspiring, everything that willing, everything that happens in the mental universe. And all of that, Descartes gathers together, labels those mental events all ideas, and labels all of that activity as thinking. And so he concludes, what am I? I am a thinking thing. That's the essence of me. I am a thing that thinks.